Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to episode 102 of the Titanforge podcast. I'm Dratnos, famed Bane of the Banshee Queen, joined by Trell, Breaker of Chains.
Holy shit!
What's up?
Tettles,
You're the worst.
Breaker of Chains. And our special guest this week, Plkatv, or Plkatv, Breaker of Chains.
Look, Jarnos, we know all three of us missed a famed Slayer this week. You don't have to rub it in again.
Thank you for flexing. I appreciate it.
How much overtime?
See, that's interesting because I was watching some guilds fighting the boss on Monday night that have, we will never raid outside of our scheduled 12 hours per week, all progression, including her. He's gone. Okay. So this week, we have, of course, special guest here, Pika, to talk about Prot Warrior stuff, because right now on the Radar.io leaderboard, actually, what space are you in right now on just, like, tanks in general?
Tanks in general, I am number 2, right now.
In the world.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Just under, the fabled bear, the super strong bear this season.
Yeah, and above, wow, dude, look at the tanks this season. We've got 5 different specs in the top 5 of the IO leaderboard right now. That is just phenomenal. And it's not like it. I mean, then what? We got another 2 brewmasters, another bear, another paladin, and the 6th spec, rounding it out in 10th. This is just a incredibly cool season to see tanks.
Every single tank, yeah, that's awesome.
Although the craziest thing is that looks so different just this morning.
Yeah, people are because look how close these numbers are, right? These are like 2 keys away from each other. All the whole top 10 is in that same like 50-point range. So a couple of good key upgrades can shoot anybody up all the way. Of course, here on Prot Warrior, so claimed 2nd place, but actually the only Prot Warrior in the top 20 is you right now. So. A spec that I think we'd love to talk to you some more about, and that will be a big focus of our show today. Of course, astute listeners may have, well, I guess viewers may have noticed. Listeners might not have noticed anything different, but viewers may have noticed we have a new overlay and everything, as recently Tettles and myself signed up with the Golden Guardians as content creators on the new GG WoW thing. Of course, Trell kind of already our stepbrother in that enterprise as a BDGG content creator.
Can you not call him our stepbrother?
So now we're sort of a happy family.
I'm the step bro.
Yeah, exactly. So for the purposes of the podcast, very little is changing. The only thing is, if you're watching this on YouTube, you now will want to go and watch it on GG WoW, and if you're watching this on one of our channels, this is where the video is going to end, and you need to go watch it, the rest of it on GG WoW, which is our new YouTube channel where we're making stuff over there. Okay, with that out of the way, let's move on to some current events. First up in the current events is a nerf in Halls of Atonement that is a nerf to the dungeon, actually also a nerf to Prot Warrior. I can't believe they would do this to us. A nerf to Wicked Bolt damage, which of course is reflectable. So unfortunate. Well, actually, it's not even a nerf to damage, it's just nerf to cast time. But that's an extra 0.5 seconds.
This is not a nerf for Prot Warrior.
This is an extra point. No, this is a nerf because it's an extra 0.5 seconds for your DPS to kick over your reflect. Very obnoxious.
Okay, that's true.
True.
I was gonna say, I bet you only get 2 reflects per pull with the shards, right? Or maybe 3 sometimes.
Usually it's 1 on pull, and then somebody forgets, so that gets messed up, and then you don't get another one because they'll just keep picking it anyways.
So it's an interesting change because I think this is like a really good change for groups that are less coordinated as a whole. Because for higher end, more coordinated groups, you have very few of those Wicked Bolts that you actually are allowed to have go through. Otherwise, your tank will be perishing almost immediately. Whereas, like, if it's spam casting, yeah, this is a massive nerf. It comes out to, like, a 33% nerf or something like that. But if you were kicking everything, then you would have rather have had it not get buffed coming into this patch kind of situation. Because
27%, by the way.
Well, so this is the damage increase, that it got coming into this patch. And so, the cast time increased from 1.5 to 2 seconds, which does reduce the DPS because it reduces the number of casts they will do in a minute, right? But only by about 5% if you don't do any interrupts. But of course, this makes it easier to land the interrupt, right? Which is, I think, the main nerf here.
I think the major thing about it is that it allows kicks to come back faster. So because there's less cast per minute, it gives you more time to, bait with the sweep, then the shockwave, and then kick again, right? Like what it does is ultimately, even though like the Wicked Bolt does so much, as most people probably found out last week during Raging, um,
Yep.
like the
It's
cast time
insane.
itself allows you to have more utility for it rather than just be like, well, I'm out of stuff. Well, good luck, you're dead.
Yeah, one interesting side effect of this, or perhaps main effect of this, was also a nerf to the dungeon, as it is one of the 2 MDI time trial dungeons that's going on right now. It's this and The Other Side, which are being done in the new time trial format on MDI, which is it's ongoing. And the way it works is the teams are like starting with a 15 key in each of those dungeons and pushing it up to 21 with just like a regular key push. If you upgrade it, it goes up. If you downgrade it, if you deplete it, it goes down. And then once they reach 21, they are then speed running it over and over again to try and get the fastest time. So we'll talk more next week about the MDI time trials once we have some results coming in. We're only a couple days into the process right now, but we've got a lot of cool teams already putting up some good times and some cool runs of these dungeons. A lot of interesting specs seeing play. But with this being one of those dungeons, it is perhaps something that made teams made this nerf come about. Perhaps, I don't know. It's hard to
I'm kinda
speculate as to
curious
why
about
this came
that.
around. Yeah.
Do you think like they were watching a team play, or if they actually had an internal team testing it out, or maybe it was just unrelated entirely, and someone was playing on live and they were like, "Okay, this is insane."
It came at midnight Pacific.
To be honest, like I don't think this has anything to do with the time trials, right? Because like you guys were saying before, like very organized groups won't let one go off anyways, right? Or you're doing so much damage that they melt anyways. So it doesn't really affect the time trials too much. I think personally anyways that this came again a lot from like the Raging week, because a lot of tanks in HOA last week, were just like, I'm not doing this key because if I don't have a soothe or you don't have enough stops, you're just dead. There's nothing you can do.
I agree with that.
I was more bewildered that they pushed a hotfix nerf at midnight. I was like, okay, who's
Yeah, that was
working at
wild.
midnight? Why are you working that late?
Maybe it was scheduled. They scheduled it, went home for the night.
Like Drat does scheduling his weekly videos?
Yeah, well, that's what you're supposed to do, right? You get it
Yeah,
ready,
yeah,
and then you
course.
hit the schedule button.
Of course.
All right, so we also talked about it a little bit in the intro when I was being incredibly toxic to all 3 of you. But the Sylvanas situation is actually, I think, worth discussing a little bit further, because the Hall of Fame has now closed entirely for the Horde side. We have had all 100 guilds make their way in. Meanwhile, over on the Alliance side, we have now got 20.
Oh, woo!
Yeah, 20 guilds that have gotten in on the Alliance side. Of course, the Alliance Hall of Fame is the gate for Cross-Realm Mythic opening up, which I'm looking forward to, because first 3, I think, is very achievable this tier with, pretty scuffed groups, so get some nice gear on alts, get some nice boxes, but that being Cross-Realm is really helpful for those kind of runs. Another thing, good?
Do you think that Cross-Realm should be predicated based off of the Hall of Fame filling up?
No.
It's kind of an arbitrary pick, right? For like why, like when Cross-Realm is enabled.
I think Cross-Realm is great and should be available very soon in a patch. I think you just set like an arbitrary number of weeks, like 5 weeks in, 6 weeks in after Mythic opens, something like that. Just let us go Cross-Realm.
I think that, yeah, because right now, that Hall of Fame may not fill up for another like month. 2 months.
I don't know, but if you open up Cross Realm too early, you're just gonna see a lot of Chinese guilds all the way down to 100.
Yeah, so that's the point of discussion that always comes up is the allegations of like selling the spots, which we had some evidence of that, and then some bans last Hall of Fame. Definitely something that I hope somebody is keeping an eye on as well, just not just in that region, but just worldwide, to keep the integrity of the Hall of Fame as cool as it is.
You want to know something that was really toxic? During Old Deer, AK made a second guild to try to get TF to not be able to get Hall of Fame. We just made a
Oh my
second
God.
guild to kill Gahoon the week after.
Yeah, there are protections against that though, right? Like you have to
Yeah,
have
you
like a
weren't allowed
certain
to
number
do
of new
that.
players or something. But my understanding of the thing that happened in China last year was that it was the same players logging on to the accounts of the people who were buying it, and then just clearing the raid like on different characters, right? Logged into different accounts in the new guild that was buying it. Um, so yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely piloting because they had like one pull killed Sylvanas, like a progression total of one pull. You know, that's
What do you
literally
mean? We
impossible.
did that.
yeah, it just had a good strat. Yeah, I agree. It's as long as the Hall of Fame is going to be worldwide, the same standards definitely need to be enforced on it worldwide. Because anything that like, there's a lot of stuff that you can't get away with in Europe and NA that you also need to not be able to get away with anywhere else if we're all going to be in the
Agreed.
same Hall of Fame. But another problem with Sylvanas that's been going on as well has been, have you guys had this, the lag, the phase 1 lag?
Yeah.
Oh,
Not
yes.
okay. So whenever you talk about phase 1 lag, people believe that you're talking about the lag on pull that everybody gets.
Right. So
Not that.
There's the 5 seconds on pull or whatever where you're like 400 ms lag or something like that. You miss a global or something. That's been there since. I mean, that's bad. That does feel bad. Not a big deal, right? That's just like a whatever thing. But there's been some sizable, like, not even just phase 1 as well, but just like whole Sylvanas shards have been completely borked for multiple hours of prime time on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Mondays at like NA rating prime time. Apparently, it's been an issue in the Oceanic servers as well. For my guild, we had this on the day we killed Sylvanas. We were lucky to avoid it until then, but we were actually just we put up a 30-minute break timer. We went out and soft reset the instance. We came back in. We still couldn't get everybody like connected even to that server. Then we like tried to pull the boss once, and we're like, okay, this is unplayable. Waited another 30 minutes, and then we were finally able to pull the boss. But it's been real bad for a lot of guilds, and we've seen it with your two guilds and with several of the other guilds that were like almost in the Hall of Fame, just losing hours of potential progression time to it.
Yeah, I think like on the Monday before the Hall of Fame closed, our guild, like, we lost at least 1 hour to it, and it was just like people. It was not only like you were losing GCDs, you even trying to avoid mechanics or not even seeing the mechanic until like it already hit you was just like an awful experience. And even the following Tuesday and Wednesday, we at least had to hard reset the entire raid 3 times, and it was just completely awful.
You know something funny too? There were multiple times where the first arrow would go off, and we would get 3 sentinels instead of the 2 that you're supposed to get. We would just get 3 sentinels randomly, and you're just like,
that's funny.
Okay, don't really know what to do about this bug. Dude, look at that clip.
Yeah, this clip.
We never saw that. Oh no.
So for those who haven't pulled Sylvanas, this may look pretty normal, but this is those events are being delayed by like 10 seconds from when they're supposed to happen. The arrows are being shot like 10 seconds later than they're supposed to in this.
I got meleeed by a sentinel across the room, and I've never been madder. I have never been more upset than gonna get my sentinel across the room.
At one point,
the fantastic thing about it is that, if I ever stood in a mechanic, I was lagging. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah, I was lag. I wasn't greeting.
That actually totally validates what I was about to say. I turned to roll away from a sentinel, and the lag made me roll toward it, so I died on one of the pulls. But like Pika said, that was just a way to cover up my mistake.
All right, so let's move on to talking about our main topic, which of course with our guest here is largely about you. So we have kind of 2 different ways that we've split this up. One is going to be the journey you took to getting to doing high keys and that process all along the way up. And then later on, we will talk about Prot Warrior in particular and tanking this season and those sorts of more game related rather than like social and outside the game and, growth and stuff. So this is something that we've talked to a couple of different people who have gotten to high keys about this, and there's been a couple of different ways that the story has developed. So I'm interested to hear your take on it. How did your journey to doing high keys, doing world first keys, get started for you? When did you start doing Mythic Plus?
Well, I actually started doing Mythic Plus like most people in Legion, right? But I was mainly like a DPS brain back then. I didn't really want to get too much into tanking. I found it like way too much responsibility. Where you just want to go in, slam. Oh, we didn't time it. Well, it's the tank's fault. Bad route. Which is like the typical like excuses DPS brain. But how I really started like developing my passion for Mythic Plus was actually at the start of BFA and season 1. Like I think most people, it started in my own guild. We just kind of get 5 people like, oh, hey, you want to try pushing Mythic Plus? It seems fun. What else content is there? You have to do something. So yeah, and that's when I actually decided, hey, I'm going to go kind of full-fledged into Mythic Plus. I'm going to actually like learn about it, really dive into it. And then I re-rolled Blood DK because Blood DK season 1 was like super good, and I was like, okay, if I want to do Mythic Plus, I'm kind of a player that I might as well do whatever is the best at it. So Blood DK was fantastic. At that point, after season 1 finished, I realized I really hate Blood DK, and why the heck am I putting myself through this trauma of playing something you don't like? And then that's where I became like a Prot Warrior main at that point, because I already started playing DPS Warrior in my raid, so I wanted to like off spec and play prop tanking in Mythic Plus. But like through that experience, I got to like learn that I love challenging myself, and I love the challenging 5-man content. It's kind of what made me fall in love with WoW in the first place, right? Like when I started playing in BC, it was like the Karazhan and the Zulaman that really, dug in. Like, oh, this is so much fun. It's like 9 other of you and your friends. You're wiping the entire night. You have this like really tight knit community, as opposed to like 20 and 40 man raiding where some guy comes in, I don't even know his first name, I don't know who he is, but he comes in, he blasts, and I see you next time, right? So you get that like more closeness feeling while like pushing yourself in challenges. So that's how I first started jumping into Mythic Plus. But then after that, like season 2 onwards, after like the debacle of like playing Blood DK and how OP it was, it got nerfed to the ground, thank goodness, because again, I hated it.
Yo, what?
Yeah, it was dead the rest of the X pack actually.
They hit it with the old Blizzard triple nerf, right? They're like they just took it out back, and just 3 different parts of the kit were annihilated, right? Bone Storm, armor, AMS necrotic, all that cool stuff.
The base
armor is bad.
It's still just awful for them. Like a full expansion later.
But like it's great, having that bone star that makes you immune. Like you never want a tank that has one ability that makes you immune for a certain amount of time, where anything can happen during that time, and they're basically a godlike. Why would Blizzard ever want that to be in the tank meta?
Tanks want that to be in the tank meta for sure.
But I assume that was a comment about Incarn.
I mean, I would never bash how certain tank metas are right now. But
30 seconds of immunity for the biggest pull in the dungeon every 3 minutes.
But yeah, basically after that, I developed a really love for Mythic Plus, so I started. My team only played like a certain amount of time just due to scheduling in the guild, so I ended up pugging a lot of keys. And slowly climbing the pug ladder. It was a very fun experience and a very like love-hate relationship with that. It kind of felt like it was like that grind of you're gonna fail sometimes, you're gonna win sometimes. And as I went up that journey, I would just like, oh, I met somebody new. Oh, you do good damage. Oh, let me invite you to my friends list, or like keep you on my friends list. Oh, a healer that's willing to play with me. Okay, I need you to be on my friends list, And that was kind of like the journey to go up. And then eventually, there was a Mythic Plus team that like are still my very good friends today, that decided that they wanted to replace their tank because they were like lagging a bit too much and it just wasn't like working out for them. But luckily, I also had one of my guildies that was also in that push team, so they asked me to come tank like a couple of nights with them and like see how our synergy was, and it went very well. And that ended up being like my push team for all of BFA. We didn't do like crazy good. Like in the end of the day, end of season 4, I ended up being like a top 20 tank just for Prot Warrior, not for like tanks everywhere. But top 20 tank was like pretty decent, especially since we were playing with Boomkin at the time. And Boomkin and Mythic Plus, like, oh my god, you don't even want a Boomkin and Mythic Plus back then,
Dude, that season even Tettles didn't play Boomkin. He was on Petals.
Good old Petals.
Yeah.
That season was cursed.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then that was like where you wanted a mage, right? And we were still playing with a Boomkin at the time, but that was the group that we were pushing with, and I really enjoyed just playing with the friends and the friendships that you make, as opposed to like going seriously hardcore. Because when you go so hardcore, eventually you're gonna hit a wall where you have to play the meta for one reason or not. Like nothing's gonna beat Fire Mage Combust in season 4, right? Like, what are you gonna do if you don't play with a Fire Mage? But yeah. So then I ended up top 20 Prot Warrior, and then I was like really hungry from there. I would spend all my days kind of like watching. Oh, okay, like let's look at Dorky. What are they doing today? What is Nerf doing today? What is Raz doing today? Like, people don't understand how much work like tanks do outside of actually doing the keys, right? Because most of our free time is just like, oh, how did Equinox pull this today? Oh, okay, that's very interesting. Oh, how did Lissara? Like I'm just like even though it's not my same class, I have to kind of look at the routes and develop like that strategy, because my DPS will show up and be like, oh, what are we doing today? All right, we're running this key, and I'm like, oh, did you look at the route? They're like, yeah. Then we go to the pull. Are we pulling this? I'm like, didn't you look at the route? No. It's like, oh my gosh, you do so much work outside of the keys, but you love it, right? Because if you play tank, you have to like that challenge a bit. But yeah, that's how it slowly pushed me into more higher Mythic Plus, and yeah, just playing with friends in season 1, season 2 is kind of got me to where I am at right now.
So I have a question. How do you adapt your routes for like playing a different like spec of tank compared to the meta? Because I guess for a good example, the Halls of Atonement meta strategy is 30% of your count is done with the first pull of the dungeon, right? You go right and you do 30% of the count. I don't know if Prot Warrior is able to do that. I suspect the answer is probably yes. But if you weren't, how would you even adapt a route that makes that happen? Or something to where the key is also feasibly timable at a similar level?
I think it comes down to how much time do you have to waste. Like, if you have a lot of time, then it's a lot. Like, you just take someone's route and you try it, right? And you don't have to deal with what am I gonna fix beforehand, right? A lot of the time, in season 4 BFA or like early on season, you kind of look at Dorky and like, okay, Dorky pulled this. I'm gonna go pull with Dorky. Then you die and you realize, okay, I cannot pull like Dorky. What can I change to make it more feasible? Whether it's like pulling 1 less mob, 2 less mobs, trying to figure out that route. Like right now in Halls of Atonement, it's crazy, right? Even today, I was kind of looking at how am I gonna pull for my 26 Halls of Atonement this week. And yes, the first 30% is done in the first pull. Whether you take like Howl Masters, more bolts, it's kind of dependent on what tank you're playing, but that's the key. You need to know what strengths are for your specific class and how to adapt the routes for that, right? Like, I know Prot Warrior, okay, doesn't matter how many groundskeepers you bring in, I'll be okay, right? But you add 1 more obliterator and I'm dead.
Like, that is unfair, man. Groundskeepers destroy me on Brewmaster and High Keys right now.
But like that's how you got to do it, right? You have to think of how many physical only mobs can I bring in to make this like equate to some other tank that's pulling very, very big, and you got to look at your strengths and play it like that. You can't just completely copy one other kind of tanks and be like, what am I doing wrong? Well, it's my DPS fault. No, my healer's just not healing enough. You can't, right? You have to look at why are they successful in this, and then why are you not successful in this?
They didn't miss 6 obliterator kicks.
I wasn't an in-card. What do you want?
Yeah, that should be your response. Why did you die? I don't know. I forgot to press in-card. Sorry.
Yeah. My favorite DPS response mid-key is, oh, we're doing this pull? I saw so-and-so do this pull. And my response is always, what class were they playing? And then they're like, oh.
True.
Okay, so you mentioned that you were playing with a consistent group throughout all of BFA, and you ended in that like top 20 Prot Warrior space. How has that gone this expansion? Have you decided to, continue doing that or change it up somehow? And what was that process like?
Well, I mean, every Mythic Plus group will always kind of come to an end, right? Whether it is like people have like real life happens or like scheduling changes. I think that's like the biggest thing, right? Like schedules always change. People, find significant others. People find jobs so that they can no longer push at certain times or things like that. So like my team itself looks nothing like the team I played with in BFA right now, but it's kind of crazy, right? Like the people I used to play with in BFA, like early BFA, were just like my guildies. And then I would always look at people's streams of like like take example, Rifey, right? I play with Rifey, and I used to always look at this guy's stream and like, wow, this guy's such a good Mythic Pluser. You know, it's so cool to watch these people like play. Like I would never imagine in any day that I would be able to play with like some of these high-O players, right? But then today, like I'm like talking to Rifey and I'm like, why did you die? Like, it's such a way of like, you know, like I'm talking like we're like, because we're really good pals now, right? Instead of like, oh, you know, I'm going in this and I'm like, oh my god, you're the big streamer, teach me. But yeah, like things definitely have changed like quite a bit. My group has like changed like crazy, even from season 1 of Shadowlands to season 2 now. But like what I've kind of really wanted and what I kind of learned a little bit about season 1 is that I really like playing with people I really get along with. I'm not really all about the, you know, I'm gonna play with this guy because that's how I'm gonna get IO, right? Because there's no point in the end of the day. If I play with people that I don't enjoy my time with, or I play with people that like you know, they're just playing meta, so that's why we're gonna time keys, then I don't really have that banter, you know, that fun. I know like my friend said, my monk today, he showed up on WoW highlights because he did some really dumb stuff in a key and he just died, and the whole time we're doing like a 24 SD, we're just laughing at him, right? And like that's where Mythic Plus becomes really fun, instead of just like, all right, kick, oh, we timed it, okay, let's move on, next key.
So that's why you lobbed Rat no shots. I see.
I can't believe this.
That's actually a big reason I wanted to get Pika on the show, because that's very uncommon to find a tank that's doing world first keys that does not lob his players for other players that do slightly more damage or something. Like Pika plays with the group that he enjoys playing with. He's always laughing. He's having a good time. I think that's really valuable in the community, and sets a great example. That's what I did years ago when I was still good at the game too. So I appreciate seeing that.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Shut up.
Oh my god.
Damn, he's dead. He's dead. He ruined my chat's channel points, and now you murdered him for it.
No, but I mean, I right now I'm mainly focused on playing with people I really enjoy to play with, because I mean, if you can look at my group comp, it's like really weird compared to a lot of other group comps, right? We don't have a Venthyr Boomy, we don't have a Fire Mage, right? We don't have a H-Pal. We're playing with a Resto Shaman since season 1 and season 2, which is always just like a worse H-Pal, right? In a lot of ways. I mean, season 2 is like a little bit better because they got a buff with their Vesper Totem, so they're doing a lot of AoE damage, but like we heavily still suffer in the single target department. Like you're not going to get that huge, you know, Ashen Hollow burst single target damage that H-Pal has. I play with a rogue that refuses to ever play Outlaw. He only plays Assassination and Sub, regardless of what the difference is. Like, you know, he sees a Plague Borer hitting me, he's like, I can't do anything, sorry, I don't got gouge, you know, but I like to play Sub, you know, that's completely fine. But yeah, I really enjoy the people I play with, and that's like always been my #1 priority.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like Pika's like a carbon copy of me from years ago. Like I played with the rogue that never played Outlaw as well, Morning back in the day. And it's funny to like see, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, when you find a rogue friend as a tank when you're climbing the leaderboards, they're your friend forever, pretty much. Like you find a healer and a rogue, and then the other 2 spots are kind of flexible after that.
True. My other 2 slots, like I really only like care about my healer, my rogue. The other 2 slots, you know, whatever, you know, they come and go, that's fine. But I'm playing with those 2 for a while.
So messed up.
That's how it goes.
All right, let's move on, I guess, to we'll talk more about Prot Warrior in specifics, and we can talk more about group stuff as it comes up then. But let's do our tips of the week now as a nice little interlude. My tip of the week is, if you are swapping covenants, as I've been doing a lot recently, one thing to note is that they've made it so you gain a conduit energy every time you gain renown. So, and you also need to use like 30 conduit energy to fill all your trees. So what you want to do is slot in your conduits as you're leveling up, like at 30 renown, just go and quickly spend all your conduit energy, because you will regenerate it as you keep leveling, and then you won't get in this spot that I was in recently, where I am capped on renown and out of conduit energy and still have like a tree that's empty that I want to use, and I have to wait a week to use. So that is my tip of the week.
Is that something new? I didn't even know
Yeah.
renown gives you conduit energy.
That's new as of this patch, yeah. It is a nice quality of life change to us. You know, it's still conduit energy though.
Yeah, this stuff.
It doesn't
How did your
yeah.
how did your Blood of the Enemy farm go?
Pretty good. I think I farmed something like 100 renown across the account from comp stomps last week. Maybe 50 to 100. I'll take the under on 100. I've got several characters that were not Night Fae 2 weeks ago that are now 62 Night Fae.
Dude, we were Dragonus and myself were doing comp stomp at like 4 a.m. and we were having a losing battle. And Dragonus goes, "I don't know what you're talking about. I value my time. That's why I'm doing comp stomp here at 4 a.m."
You could be doing Korthia dailies in that time. Come on.
True. Korthia daily is so
Holy
fun and cool. Anybody?
shit.
I just love the critter one. I love the wings one. The one where you get the wings that you use and you fly through the orbs. Those are just my favorites.
Dude, the critter one this most recent week, I've never seen that one before. Oh my god, that thing was so bad.
Yeah,
there's a lot
the
of
one
work.
where you just stomp on the dudes or what?
No, you throw the treats at the critters and you have to spam your extra action button and then it comes out and you're playing a balance druid, so you don't have enough damage to kill the bird unless you pop your CDs on it. So you can only do one critter every 3 minutes.
You have to Ravenous Frenzy each bird. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody didn't do his Korthia dailies.
I may have abandoned that one.
Is Korthia dailies mandatory in Ascent by chance?
I mean, it's not mandatory, but you know, or else you get benched on heroic. If you don't do them.
He's flaming me again. I got benched on heroic because I was a Windwalker, and there was a little space on the platform on Sylvanas, so they had to bench like 4 people.
Yes, Sylv Heroic week 1 was actually a struggle. That was a real struggle. The Korthia dailies, I mean, you only have to do the ones that give you research. That's the thing, right? You just you can look at each one and see what the reward is, and just don't accept the ones that are like Korthite crystals or whatever.
No, I have my process. You know, I log on, I pick up all the dailies. I don't look at what they give you, and I just, you know, you just got to make your rounds, kill every rare, pick up every mushroom. You know, gotta get all those conduits to 252, get all the sockets ready. I think, like personally, my favorite one is actually the, you know, the rare for Night Fae, the ones that spawns the dragon, then you ride it, and you press a button. Ever since like I watched like I think it was WoW highlights or something like that, and then like if you bind your mouse wheel down in like to 1, whenever you get on the dragon and it does the thing where you have to press 1, you just do spin wheel mouse wheel down and it instantly completes.
That's crazy.
So you save like you know, I save like an extra minute every single day on my Korthia daily. It's got to be hell of efficient.
That is incredible. Trell, what is your tip of the week?
Yeah, that was a good tip. That was a long.
That's not even his tip. Is the sick part? That's just a bonus wisdom.
True. My tip has to do with potions. So potions are a 5-minute CD as of this expansion, right? So DPS potions are a big deal though in Mythic Plus, and you can use like, I don't know, 5, 6 potions, 7 maybe in some keys total if you do them right. And I think the best way to go about it is just to structure them with lust at first. So you plan out your lust for the key. You have 3 potions there, probably, maybe 4. And then you just pop your in-between potions on CD when they come back up. So they'll for sure be back when lust is up. That's a pretty safe way to do it. There's probably some other times where you want to desync lust and potion or do a potion early before lust is up because you're holding lust for something important. But
or invis pot as well. Max. Make sure you figure out, if you're going to do this, you figure out where you need your invis pots. And like sometimes you have an invis pot 3 minutes after lust, so you can't pot the lust. So definitely look into that.
It's kind of crazy though. Like if you compare that to season 1, like you would just never pot at all, right? Because you'd always be saving it to invis skip pride. So like as doing Mythic Plus now, I always forget to pot because I'm always usually saving my pot to skip pride. So all the time I'm just like, oh well, I forgot to pot. I'm just gonna pot at unoptimal time just so I can get more pots throughout the dungeon as opposed to, you know, not potting at all. But that's, you know, it's really good.
All right, Pika, what is your official tip of the week? Not even the scroll wheel bonus tip.
Oh, my wise man, you know, on the hill kind of wisdom. I think my tip kind of comes on, like for me and anybody kind of doing Mythic Plus, is that when you watch other players, you should watch to learn and not to compare. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of people who watch, like, again, like Dorky, you watch like the top players in the world, and you go back to your Mythic Plus team that only plays like, you know, 2 hours on a Saturday, and then you have the exact same comp, and you try to do the pull, and then you completely die, right? And you go, oh, if only my players were better than like only if my players were as good as them. Like, why did you miss this kick? Why did you mess that up? But a lot of the time, you don't understand like all the behind the scenes kind of hours, the hours of planning, the hours of practice that you see people have to put in order to do those kinds of things, right? So you never want to be comparing and be like, oh, this tank timed this key, this tank timed this key. Oh man, I must just be horrible. I'm awful. Like, why can't we do that? But honestly, you don't know how much time and effort that they have to commit to like get Hall of Fame, things like that, over like other normal people guilds, So but like basically always watch to learn, never compare, focus on yourself and do the best that you and your friends can do, and that's the way to be happy.
So the synthesis of your tip is quit your job, start doing keys for 12 hours a day, neglect all other responsibilities in life.
Pretty much, you got to get that IO,
IO above all. Something you should take from Pika's tip though is that he's coming from the perspective of a tank trying to imitate these pulls, right? And when you go bring these pulls to your group, you got to adapt them and realize that your teammates are human. And usually you got to start somewhere small and just work your way into those pulls. So like adding one step at a time, adding something slightly more complicated than you did last run, or just adding like one or two harder pulls per dungeon as you go instead of like every single pull redone for the whole key. That way it keeps it realistic for your group, and you can learn while you make good use of your time and timing keys at the same time.
Yeah, you're gonna fail. It's natural. Like, you're gonna fail 100 times. You see the MDI team do it, and they get it on the first try. They failed like 200 times on the very first pull before that ever even happened.
Yes. If you are planning to be an MDI team or something, that is where it can be useful to just like have, okay, Echo did this as like, okay, it is technically possible, right? But you have to absolutely keep in mind that like it's not just doable because they did it and you just pull it all and it works, right? You have to actually do all the same learning and repeats and practice that they did to make it happen. And your players need to all be on that level as well, which those are really hard things to do.
Another big issue too is just like the replayability of dungeons outside of tournament realm specific stuff is pretty brutal. So if you do want to go and practice one pull, you have to have the key for that pull, and then you are potentially throwing away that key by practicing that pull by itself.
Yeah, this is why in MDI we see first pulls that are so much riskier and more complicated and also cleaner than like a pull 30 minutes into theater or whatever, 30 minutes into DOS even, because they can practice the first pull. It costs you 2 minutes to reset the dungeon and practice the first pull. It costs you 30 minutes to practice a pull that's deep into the dungeon. So even there, you can see the effects of what practice lets you do.
Yeah, it's definitely like a whole different ball game when you're trying to push like high mythic plus, as opposed to like just doing a couple of keys a night.
All right, Tettles, we have a clip of the week this week. This week from Limit Maximum. What do we need sound for this one?
No, this clip is really funny though. It's on Painsmith. I think everybody's had a similar situation to this. Where they're going to their spots on Painsmith. Somebody accidentally clicks the lock gate.
Oh no! Oh, a tragedy there.
I like how they made it back, but they like bounced off the other chain people, and it just ended up being bad anyway.
Dude, Max just looks completely unfazed by it as well.
In the clip, he's like, "What? What is going on?" As the person clicks the gate, he's like, "Oh no."
That is crazy. Dude, I saw another clip from Limit recently as well where they were in Phase 3 or Phase 2 Sylvanas and fired up gates early, so like 10 of them get hit by a Veil that he baits in a bad spot. And then they just healed through it. They healed through 60 stacks of Veil across the raid.
What?
That's
in
insane.
Sylv, yeah, somehow.
That is a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird from that clip, Tettles. You linked it, and all 3 Boomkins died to that one mechanic. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but it's kind of weird.
They didn't get a rally. You know something funny? You can eat a spike in bear form without bark skin up.
Oh, I did it all of Prague. as a guardian though, not a moon
Okay,
kid.
not a moon kid, but yeah.
I didn't do it all at Prot, but I did it sometimes. It's fun. All right. Speaking of fun, let's talk about Protection Warrior. Specifically, I think actually an interesting thing to talk about as well, right up at the top, is also about covenants as well, because I know you are a Night Fae believer. Have you messed around with the other ones as well, Kyrian and Mythic Plus, anything like that, or what is it about Night Fae in particular that draws you to that version of Prot Warrior?
Well, season 1, I didn't hesitate to int my raid on farm by playing around with all 4 covenants every other week and doing the renown grind after we killed Sire Denathrius. So I wanted to be able to give good advice on Prot Warrior, because that's when I started streaming, and a lot of people were asking me, hey, is the Necrolord viable? Is Venthyr viable? And at the time I was pushing as a Venthyr Prot Warrior, right? Which is supposedly at least like one of probably the most unoptimal covenant spec you can play for Prot Warrior, but I was still pushing on it. So I decided to, if I'm going to give out advice, then I might as well like play it myself and not just do it theoretically, right? Because you don't really know how something plays unless you actually play it yourself. Like in theory, Necrolord was amazing, right? Like the Boomkins were like, oh, please play Necrolord. The mages were like, yes, please play Necrolord. And then like I'd be like, okay, you know what? I'll be that guy for you. I play Necrolord. And then every moment you just hear them complaining, like, oh, I have to come in melee for this, wait, why did the Holy Pally get it? Like, oh, wait, melee, move away. Like, it was just so annoying trying to play like a banner for 2 ungrateful range DPS classes.
Bro,
that were also trying to sing them, right?
If you invite me, I will be so thankful for 1 banner.
But like in theory it's amazing, but in practice it's very hard to pull off, right? It's one of those things that you see like, oh, that'd be amazing, the numbers are behind it, you will like crush keys, but then you try and play it and nobody's getting the right buffs. It's like your Boomkin will run in and then die to a frontal, right, that they're not used to deal with, right?
I may die to that.
Yes, definitely.
Also, your mage just has mastery and is now ripping threat off you because your banner isn't giving you much damage. It's giving the mage even more damam. You don't have a covenant button that makes threat. Yeah,
exactly.
And they're in melee, so they instantly die, and you don't have time to pull the mobs off them.
That's basically the DPS struggle. But what I learned from that, by pushing on all 4 covenants, both like I would always give each covenant 1 week of Tyrannical and 1 week of Fortified, and I figured that'd be good enough for me to get a good sense of like what the covenant is capable of. And from that I actually learned that your covenant actually doesn't play that much a role specifically with Prot Warrior, right? Obviously it might differ between on other tanks, but on Prot Warrior itself, I pushed very high as a Venthyr Prot Warrior. I pushed very high as a Necrolord. Every single thing I did, it was maybe you would say like a 1 key difference, right? But like at the highest of levels, like 1 key difference is not like so crazy, right? But what allowed me to learn was that a good solid play will overtake anything else, right? It doesn't matter if I'm playing Banner, Spear, Ancient Aftershock, or Condemn, right? As long as my team is playing well, we are all very communicating very well, you can play around no matter what your strengths or weaknesses are. So going back to your question that you asked me before, you see me currently as a Night Fae Prot Warrior. One major factor to that is because I raid as a DPS warrior, and Night Fae DPS warrior is like equal to Kyrian in raid, but it comes with a caveat of you having a cheat death, right? So it's much better to play Night Fae DPS warrior in raid than it is playing Kyrian, even though they both are relatively the same damage. But when you come to Mythic Plus, I'm actually a huge proponent and a huge person that says Night Fae. I love Night Fae Prot Warrior, and why I love Night Fae Prot Warrior is that I don't have to rely on my DPS to kick because I can just kick for 12 seconds on my own.
Aftershock is so insanely good. I wish every tank spec had something like Aftershock, honestly.
And you can't feed whenever you're a seed.
You can't feed if you're a seed, but you don't play that in Key, right? You play like Karain or something, or Naya.
Yeah, right now I'm playing Naya, but experience between Karain or Naya depending on the week. But yeah, I love Night Fae's. I would say between Kyrian and Night Fae, both are very fantastic Prot Warrior's Covenants right now. Kyrian is more defensive, and it's also more offensive in the sense of it does more damage currently than Knife does, and that's because of the Mecthanos, the Owl dude, making Spear a 40-second cooldown. It makes it a very, very strong cooldown, and you pair that with Booming Voice, and you're basically just like hurling spears, and you're not doing it because you need to kite. You're not doing it for anything else other than raw damage, because you're not saving it for that opportune moment. You're just like, I want to beat DPS. I want to make DPS look bad. So
Wait.
So that's Kyrian, right? And then if you look at Knife A, you do a little bit less damage, but you have a ton more utility in your kit. You have the interrupt from Ancient Aftershock, you have the stop from Ancient Aftershock, and you also have Soul Shape. Like Soul Shape looks like people like underestimate Soul Shape so much, and that's kind of like something we're gonna go talk about a little bit later about like the kite meta. But if tanks aren't using Soul Shape, then like they're just trying to like raw dog it through it, right? They're just gonna like I'm gonna stay here. If I die, it's the healer's fault. Well, that's not necessarily true, right?
Well, maybe if you got one sacrifice instead of a Spirit Link.
True. Like in season 1, my healer would always be like, why can't you play a Vengeance Demon Hunter? This would be so much easier if you played a Vengeance Demon Hunter. I'm like, why aren't you an H-Pal?
This would be so much easier if you were an H-Pal.
This boss would already be dead.
Spirit Link is kind of just like 4 people sacking you at once. It's kind of better, right?
It just has a weird less % DR, 10% DR, and it requires no movement.
Yeah. Easy.
But it requires your team to realize that you need health instead of DPSing. You need to come and step in the Spirit Wing, but they're like, no, sorry, my Ravenous Frenzy, go away.
The rogue should be close enough.
As soon as you said Ravenous Frenzy, Tettle's like, you can't ask me to do anything.
The rogue should be close enough. I don't need to move in. The rogue is already close enough. It's not my fault.
Tuttles would get stunned on the way over anyways. He'd get so flustered.
I'm so glad Tettles has threat on Pika right now. He's just getting flamed, and I'm safe again.
Murdered. But Covenants don't matter.
He already did.
More.
Okay. So yeah, Covenants. I think though that definitely for like Prot Warrior tanking, it's really nice that Faye and Kyrian have like an AoE damage button, and then Necrolord and Venthyr like don't. You're like,
Yeah, but they have their own unique things too, right? Like when I played Venthyr actually at the very start of season 2 because people were saying that like Fury Venthyr was going to be insane single target, right? Mm-hmm. And then they realized Sylvanas doesn't have an execute phase, mm-hmm. Right? So I was actually pushing at the very start of season 2 as a Venthyr Prot Warrior, and that made me realize going back, I was like, there's a lot of things cool about Venthyr that the other things don't have, right? Like Door Shadows is actually a really good kiting mechanic, right? And how you use it is like, let's say an earthquake, like a shaman earthquake, they're always yelling like, stay in my earthquake, stay in my earthquake. And if you have to like sometimes kite like in a large circle, sometimes it gets pulled out of it and people get like annoyed. But with like Venthyr, you can go one direction and then Door Shadows back to the other direction. And there's cool like little things like that. And also Condemn on single target is actually pretty good from a tank perspective. And the only thing that really ever matters in Mythic Plus, like I know people always go like, oh, you huge overall damage, like you see like the mage popping off, the Windwalker popping off, but if you can't kill like a lieutenant at like a level 26 key, like it doesn't matter how much AoE you're doing. And something like Condemn really helps fill that gap because Condemn has both defensive value, but it's giving you like a mini version of Ignore Pain while also like really pumping out that single target damage.
I have a question. So if you're playing a DPS and a key, would you rather always be top overall, or would you rather time the key?
That is a hard question.
Time the key.
This is a question that has 2 answers, right? It has the honest answer and it has a lie, right?
The honest answer and it has a lie. So Trell is lying. Okay.
Well, when we killed Sylvanas, the first thing Trell did was link his boss ranking, right? His boss damage ranking, not his overall damage, So, Trell maybe cares, about killing the boss, not as much as his overall.
No. He linked his boss damage ranking because that was the higher one that he was on.
Oh, true. I guess that is overall.
Yeah, you have like 10 different Warcraft logs links open, and you just refresh every poll so that it updates to the newest poll, and you see which of those metrics you get rank 1 on, and you share that around.
True. I think one of our pallies or something like that. I think Lucid linked to he has top healing done as a red pally. You know, rank 1 healing on one of the other bosses. I was like, okay, good job, man.
Trouble's also rank 1 healing as Windwalker, of course. He linked that. He let you know.
I didn't even look at that one. I already had the rank 1 boss stamp. Didn't need to find another one.
Didn't need another qualifying metric, of course.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about Prot Warrior in general. Obviously, you were talking about how you played Blood Death Knight in BFA Season 1, and then swapped to Prot Warrior for BFA Season 2, right around the time that spec started to actually, even in Season 1, I think towards the end of Season 1, it was a sleeper spec, but at the start of Season 2 in particular, that was when Prot Warrior was really starting to own. How was your experience with Prot Warrior then, and how does it differ to Shadowlands?
I would say that let's start back. You're talking about like Season 1. I believe Season 1 was Infested, right?
Yeah.
Infested was like, okay, I don't know who has fond memories of Infested, but I only remember the horror stories, right? Like, you failed to kill the worm, and now it's like everywhere, and it was even worse version of Prideful, right? Because if you mess up that mechanic, the key's dead. Like, trying to fix that problem is like astronomically harder than like trying to kill a boss without pride, right? Like, that was like really awful, but like Blood DK had a lot of ways to like deal with that, whether it's like their 90% K gripping away the mobs, things like that. But Prot Warrior didn't have those kind of things. You kind of had to rely on other people, like a lot of the time.
Of course, whenever you fail to kill the worm, and it climbs up the hill at Freehold, and then it aggroes all of the mobs in the remainder of the dungeon, and they come down the stairs and kill you.
Or when the two infested mobs are healing each other. Do you remember that bug that was there for like most of the season? Where if something got infested by a worm, it wouldn't respect the whole infested aren't supposed to heal each other thing.
Yeah, that was by far like the worst. I don't know a single person was like, yeah, I really liked Infested.
Or do you remember
I actually kind of liked it, but
the infested rat in Freehold, the critter that you got on like 1 out of 3 weeks leading up to Harlan Suite?
That was awful.
It was like right next to 2 mobs that they would infest, so you'd have to taunt the rat. You have to taunt the rat across the bridge and yell at your group to not hit it because it just has 1 HP. And you kill it in the middle of the bridge, kill the worms, and then you're good.
True.
I actually like that Season 2 though, yeah.
I ironically liked that.
Going back to your guys' question, like how do I compare Prot Warrior from then and now? The cool thing about Season 2 is it came out with Reaping, right? And Reaping, I don't actually know a single person which didn't like Reaping. Reaping was like the complete opposite for me from Infested. You know, you got a lot of big packs that don't really do mechanics other than like melee. It was fantastic, and you really got to see where Prot Warrior's damage was insane, right? Because the combination of like Unstoppable Force, everything buffing Thunderclap, you got to like be a pad monkey, and that like really attracted me to Prot Warrior at the time, right? Because I'm a DPS main, so I was like, how do I do DPS as a tank? And that's all I ever cared about, right? Between like BFA's Twilight Devastation, you know, just running rank 6 Twilight Dev in every key because it's like super fun, and you know, Prot Warrior's broken amount of damage, like it just had a really good time in BFA between at least Season 2 and Season 4.
That's actually a good point. Like a bunch of DPS players that I knew in Season 2 of BFA instantly started playing tanks for the first time that season because they did so much damage. They need to make that happen more often so we get more tanks in the pool of tank players.
Yeah, but then comparing that to Shadowlands, it's kind of like we lost a lot of things, right? Because whenever Blizzard sees Warrior like super strong, they hit them with those, like, you know, the big ban hammer. That's why Warriors are always so scared in the first week of Mythic, because you know that ban hammer is coming, or like that nerf hammer is coming, right? Like Warrior, even in Nyalotha, like first week, Warriors were like nerfed there as well. Like they're always kind of like really worried about that. But yeah, they really gutted Prot Warrior at the start because they mixed our talents. They put like 3 of our best talents on the same row, as opposed to them being in different rows in BFA. So you really had to play like a different style coming into Shadowlands. A lot of people wanted to, like I remember the first example was that you go from BFA Season 4, full verse corruption. You're basically unkillable as a Prot Warrior. You can pull everything in Freehold, and your only limiting factor is your DPS dying to like harpooners, right? Like that was where it was like the hardest. And then they come in, you know, fresh. Like, yes, Shadowlands is gonna be fantastic. They get in the key. All right, I'm pulling everything. You pull everything, shield block like ends, and then you die. right? So like that was like the experience of most people going into Shadowlands, right? They didn't have, you lost the Bastion of Might, right? You lost the last stand being affected by anger management and not having bolster anymore at the same time. So they became like this very high uptime shield block, perfectly physically mitigated tank into something that actually has downtime on their mitigation. Actually will take massive physical damage when they aren't in their mitigation. And that's where, you know, people just were starting to get destroyed. People weren't understanding that, you know, at the start of an expansion, when things change, you have to adapt. And if you try to always play the same way as it was before, it just might not work out for you, right? And yeah, that's basically my experience from going from BFA to Shadowlands. And then because people couldn't adjust to the new style, they came out with the new Reprisal. You know, like, you know, if you can't fix it, we'll fix it for you. Here, play Reprisal. Oh look, we're back to high uptime of shield block. But Prot Warrior, to me at least, like honestly, I felt that it was fine in season 1. I was still being able to push like very early in the season, like 22, 23s as a Ventier Prot Warrior, right, without Reprisal. And people were just like really stuck in their ways, and that's the way they want to play. So they ended up switching, like everybody, when, you know, Fodham switched to Vengeance Demon Hunter because, oh, now I'm in meta, I can't die, awesome. You know, like, and that was the style.
Do you think Reprisal is healthy for Prot Warrior?
No, I actually complained so much about it when it first came out. Why I hate it is that it forces me to use one of my utility kits in Intervene, because I actually think Intervene is one of the craziest good spells that's like nobody really tries to perfect, right?
Sure.
And PvPers will tell you this too, right? Like Intervene is insane, right? But like people who don't use Intervene is like a whole different, you're on a whole different level. That's like the difference between being like a gladiator warrior and not being a, like literally you hit Intervene, oh, you're glad, you know?
It's DKs who don't pet kick ever, like for PvE. It's
exactly.
like, dude, it's so insane to me that there will be so many PvE DKs that just don't even have their pet kick bound. And then PvP is just randomly get kicked and you're like, I hate this. I'm very upset that I've been stopped on that now. He's gnawed me.
Yeah, and that's why I don't find it like healthy, right? Because we're now you're not intervening because, oh, this guy's about to get thrown flesh or this guy's about to get the bleed. On my stream, I try to always like find those abilities, and I'm like, okay, look, team, like this is what we're gonna do. And like a great example of that is Spire's second boss, right? So you know, every time it does the what is that, gashing leap or whatever that puts a bleed on one of your ranged, that's actually intervenable. So if you intervene your range right before it goes off,
Really?
you get the bleed as a tank and not your DPS, which is the hardest part of that fight, right? And most people don't know that, right? Because all the warriors are just intervening on cooldown to get shield block uptime. So by instilling in the population of Prot Warriors that you should just intervene on cooldown and not as utility, it sets like a really bad precedent going into, you know, when Reprisal is not a thing anymore and people are like, they're like, oh, well, Reprisal is not a thing, I'm just not going to intervene anymore, instead of like looking to find where you can use intervene the best.
I'm actually really glad you told me that. I'm gonna have my arms warrior friend that I play with intervene my healer on that boss to try to seal the bleed and then Kyrian file it off. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, that's why it's like super good, right? Like even intervene parry as an arms warrior, like you make it so your tank doesn't get melee for 6 seconds. It's like actually a cooldown every 1 minute and a half or whatever.
Yeah, that's huge on like even in raid and Kel'Thuzad, for instance. You know, you've got these abominations hitting for 500% increased damage coming out of the intermissions, but a parry taunt or a parry intervene is all you need to keep the tank alive through that while they die. Yeah, absolutely. I agree that, you know, creative solutions are really useful, and you know, a kite meta is not inherently. It's not inherently bad. I do think that at the start of Shadowlands in particular, like everybody had to kite a lot, and you died really, really fast if you weren't. Especially like I think even this Prot Warrior and Vengeance were two that could stay in and bear in cooldowns, but like outside of shield block, outside of cooldowns, outside of Demon Hunter cooldowns, and for the other 3 tank specs, just always you were just so fearful of your life. So I have enjoyed tanks being a little bit more able to stay in later in the expansion. I think those have been good changes they've made. But I do definitely sympathize with, like, you know, shield block being full uptime is less interesting than it being something you have to actually think about.
And if they do add 2 legendaries at some point during this expansion, Prot Warrior Omega Broken.
Yeah, Prot Warrior can will probably dish out a lot of damage, right? Because I've experimented a lot with like
the Aftershock Lego.
Actually, I don't like that one because like it does a lot of damage, but you have to keep things still.
Yeah.
And it's not
True.
like that's again one of those like best case scenario you do a ton of damage. Worst case scenario you're running and it does nothing, right? And I hate those kind of legendaries. My favorite legendary outside of Reprisal is actually Seismic Reverberation, right? And that's the one where every time you hit Revenge, it actually does another Revenge if there's 3 or more targets. So like I really like that playstyle because it makes me think of pulls in a whole different way, right? Like how can I get 3 targets all the time? And marksman hunters will love me, right? If I play with them because they also benefit from 3 targets. And that's the kind of niche I think is really cool when you have legendaries adjusting your playstyle rather than just kind of being like, oh well, this legendary makes me do way more damage, but I don't even know what it does, right? And I think that's really cool, interesting. But going back on a little bit on your point on like the kite meta, I think I also think like purely kiting is a bad thing, right? You don't want to not feel like you're a tank, but you're tanking, right? But also the opposite, like BFA was that unique chance of like of people really seeing like full versatility tank. You can take anything. You don't have to move too much. But honestly, my favorite dungeon of all time in BFA was Motherlode. It was a super hard dungeon, right? From a tank perspective. If you tried to pull the way like the professionals were pulling, it was super hard, right? You're pulling really big, but you want to pull as many big robots at the same time in the first area that you could without actually tanking them. Because if you try to tank them, you die in one hit. Because even no matter how much versatility you have, you're going to die because it's like a really big magic hit, right? Which isn't like mitigated as much for a lot of tanks. And I felt like once you mastered it, you felt so good, right? Because you would go into a pug, you would do that kite. People were like, oh my God, I love you. You know, you're pulling so cool, pulling so large. Like I've never seen like tanks do this. But then like and then you find a tank who can't do it and they run in and they just die. Right, so there's like a really big nuance to it, and I think that's something in season 1 I really enjoyed was like you could really tell a tank that was like very seasoned and like really practiced versus a tank that was like, I'm strong, let me go in, I'm dead.
Yeah. I'm surprised your favorite dungeon wasn't Shrine of the Storm because you do the most damage.
Well, I mean, it was great, but one missed kick again. I hate that. I hate that feeling of, oh, I was DPSing, I missed my kick while I'm dead. There's nothing you can do about it, right?
Yeah, Spell Reflect.
Spell Reflect, so dumb.
Yeah, Spell Reflect was very good.
I think it's. I mean, it still does a lot of stuff this expansion as well. I think there's a little bit less of those like, oh, it's gonna solo this entire mob like it did on that mob on the bridge in Shrine. Remember where you just like you'd reflect it twice and it was dead.
There is stuff like that still though, like Ether Divers in Spires Ascension. If you Shockwave, you line up all their casts, and then they hit you. I'm doing the top DPS on that pull, right? Like even with like 8-10 mobs, DPS are like, yeah, I'm doing so much damage while I'm still top DPS because I reflected one mob, right? So like there's like cool things like that. I think a lot in Shadowlands they're focusing a lot more on deflection instead of reflection. So a lot of the time, like the ability just like doesn't do any damage to the boss really or you. And that's like a cool way of looking at it. It makes Spell Reflect still good, but not like super OP. And I don't mind that kind of balance. But like to your point, in Necrotic Wake, last boss, if you get sent down and you reflect that guy's channel ability, it like one-shots them up. So it's even better than like Touch of Death. You don't have to do anything, right? Like you go there, I can literally stand there as a DPS warrior and hit reflect when they cast on me, and I can sit there and it'll kill itself.
Globgrog is also so dumb, by the way.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good reflect still. I mean, they toned it down a lot through BFA because Prot Warrior was so good for so long, but they're creeping up again. They're starting to get out of hand again, I think.
But there's cool things which you never even think that you can spell reflect. Like let's take the example in Mist, the stalkers that bite. If it's on the tank, like it's on a warrior, just reflect it.
Yeah, even though it's like a physical hit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like weird, right? But like it's all about experimentation. I always kind of tell people that like, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, just spell reflect on cooldown. You're gonna get something.
Is it a reflect or is it a deflect on that bite?
It's a deflect on that bite.
Oh, what the? Okay, that's so cool.
Yeah, but like you only learn by like just trying different things and playing with it. I think Sense from Nerfed, he did a really good job. He tried to compile like all the spell reflects in like a Excel document and like tell you exactly what you can spell reflect. If you're willing to read that huge paper on like what you can reflect, then like it's a really good read to it. But for me, like I personally just learned through like hitting spell reflect on everything and just like checking, did it work, did it not work.
Yeah, Sense actually does that every X pack that I've played. He always has a really good knowledge base on all the reflectable things.
Yep, he's we a lot of warriors could not do it without him.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that spreadsheet if anybody wants it in the description in place. Yeah, it's the Sense's Shadowlands blockable and reflectable spells, which you can tab between the different raids and stuff, and dungeons, and see. Yeah, a lot of stuff you'd be surprised is indeed reflectable or blockable. And it also has at the bottom damage taken from the run, so you can figure out how much fizz versus how much melee, or how much magic damage is coming in, which I don't actually know what that changes for Prot Warrior kit. I know like Demon Hunter, there's like an endurance conduit swap you could make that's like Shattered Souls healing versus magic DR, and you'd swap that out based on what percentage of the incoming damage is magic or fizz. Does Warrior have something like that as well?
We don't really change our conduits for that kind of stuff, but we do change, like, you can change your soulbind for that kind of stuff. I think the big thing in season 2 is you change like Sagadon's buff. Are you taking Stone Ward or are you taking 15% magic DR, right? And the 15% magic DR is like crucial on dungeons like Plaguefall, like last boss of Hoa and Tyrannical. Like, I don't know how a Prot Warrior lives last boss on Tyrannical Hoa without killing Sagadon, like at a 25. Like, because we just get wrecked by something like that.
Battle res.
Yeah, battle res. That is something, you know.
APT.
True. Actually,
APT.
Yo, you're actually brilliant. Maybe I should ask my healer to run APT for that dungeon.
His healer is seething right now.
Yeah.
He probably plays Vicar, and if you asked him to play APT, he'd be like, "No, I'm not playing that."
No, anytime I ask my healer to do something for me, he's like, "No." One of the big challenges we had this season, and this will like lead into like, I know you're gonna ask about like dungeons later, right? But one of the hardest dungeons for me right now is actually Sanguine Depths, and that's because of the change they made with the bleed on the Sentinels, right? The Sentinel bleed is no longer dodgeable, or not dodgeable. It's no longer like rangeable.
Rangeable.
Yeah, rangeable, right? So that's a really bad change for Prot Warrior specifically, because our weakness is already bleeds, right? And if you're not playing a Kyrian with the file, it's like really hard. So one of the unique ways that we were dealing with it early on was he was gonna play the
Klaya, right?
Yeah, Klaya, right? Which whenever he uses the potion, then I also get that ability if I'm low health, right? So that was clearing my bleed, and we also used that on TOP first boss on Necrotic Weeks on Tyrannical, because it was just like I had no way to reset. So he that was our way of doing it. But as soon as he got the trait which makes him does so much more damage, he was like, "I'm never changing soulbinds for you again. You figure it out."
That's actually so cheesy that worked at all. But yeah.
Huh. Yeah, but Prot Warrior, I feel that you have to play to how you can like use your kit in order to like solve your solutions, right? You can't just be like, "Oh well, I guess I'm screwed. I don't have bop, right? Because I'm not playing with an HPAL." You have to find these creative solutions in order to time these high keys, or else you're just gonna give up, right? There's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, I think building up that knowledge of like all the different options you have within your kit, and then from like whoever you're playing with to help you. Like, I think that's a large part of the reason why people gravitate towards the meta, right? Is that they get to have those questions already answered for them, right? Like, you already know how Bear Holy Paladin is supposed to do every pull, right? It's like, oh, you Ashen Hallow it and you incarnate. Okay, yeah, I get it. And you can see all the streamers how they handle all those things as well in the super meta comps. But like, if you do want to play something like a Prot Warrior Resto Shaman group, right? You need to do all of that. Like, okay, this pull's really hard. Like, let's look through all the soulbind trees that we have available to us here. Is there something we can do? Is there a talent that we're not thinking of that makes this sort of thing work?
But I love that. I love that feeling of like finding that creative solution, right, in order to solve your problem. Because people go, like for example, like even like Spire's second boss, like you guys were like, wow, you can intervene that. Like, yeah, like that's a great way that we deal with it because we don't have bop. Right, bop is like a huge savior on that fight because you can just bop whenever a Kyrian doesn't get it or somebody without immunity doesn't get it, and we just don't have that solution. So we are forcibly finding ways to deal with these things, which are actually really cool that they're in the game.
Yeah, you get those as well. Like, even just like, how are we supposed to do this in a group with whatever number of melee or ranged you have, right? Because there's a lot of mechanics that are just going to function differently in a group with 1 range and just targeting a range every time, versus in a group with 3 range and it could go on anybody, versus in a group with no range and you just have all these weird things happening, where melee are being targeted by things that normally only target ranged. And again, it's the same process of like figuring out what you have to make something work.
But to Blizzard's credit, I actually think that they're doing a decent job with that kind of balance, right? So they took away in Hoa the shards that you can't range them anymore and hit them, and I think that was really great, right? Because melee comps in season 1 were just getting destroyed.
So messed up.
Like season 1, was I don't want to bring 2 melee. I don't even want to bring 1 melee. You're dying. Like, why don't I just play a pure ranged comp, right? And what they did like in season 2 was, okay, well, nobody can range it then everybody is more equal, right? And it's like a better playing field. So like, for instance, like my group, we run double melee, and whereas a lot of groups are pushing away from that and running triple range, right? And you can see why they want to run triple range, but I want that flexibility in order to be like, oh, my friend plays melee, well, I don't want to push you to play a Ventir Boomkin, so now we have that option, you know.
The player is definitely superior to the class for a lot of cases. I think once you start really, pushing to where the level that you are going to get walled at some point, right? There's going to be some class disparity where you're like, oh, guess that's just not doable. That's unfortunate. But as long as you're okay with that, ultimately not being able to do the absolute cutting edge of keys, just have fun, right? It's not always about doing 100% the top level keys all the time. It's definitely about having fun with your friends and making it work.
That's something I definitely like try to instill in all the groups that I make. Like before season 1 started, before season 2 started, I would pull my entire group together and be like, look, let's set our goals and what do you guys want to do? Look, do you want to chase IO? That's fantastic, you know? All power to you. That's not what we're going to be like looking at, because my ultimate goal is how far can I push with my friends? Right? Whether that is like if like, you know, let's say, I don't know, like Andy Brew is pushing 28 Spires or 28 Plaguefall, okay? We may not have that capability, right? We don't have as many dispels in our group. Like I played season 1 without a disease dispel. The only way I got through Plaguefall was Kyrian Pot. Can you imagine like trying to do that, right? We had no disease dispel, but we know our limitations and we have to be okay with that. And if you're not okay with that, you're not in the right group for you, right? You have to realize what your goals are. Do you want to push as high as you can in your group comp, or do you want IO? And if you want IO, well, you got to play meta. Like that's the end of the day.
I don't mean, you say that, but you are second in IO right now without playing meta. Now, to be fair, you know, okay, there's been raids, there's MDI.
Right
yeah, MDI's going on. But you know, it's not like you're going to be hundreds of points behind. You know, like you will probably end up being what, like within 100 points or whatever of whatever, you know, top meta thing emerges, and once they're done with MDI or whatever, and they come back and there's that fight between Echo and Ambition for rank 1 and Skyline and stuff.
Well, that's more true this season than it was last season.
That's
right?
true.
Because the gap, like if you say 100 points now, like that's actually a lot, right? 100 points is actually a lot of difference. 100 points last season was like what, like 2-3 keys.
2 keys,
right?
and now it's 8 or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like
it's a lot. That's like 20.
It's like
keys.
one key level at every single key. But at the same time, though, the meta evolves a lot over the course of a whole entire season, and at the end, yes, it gets very solved. Early on, though, I mean, even late, you should just really focus on having fun and like learn to be the best you can. Don't worry about trying to just become the absolute best all the time. I mean, unless that is your goal. I mean, you can do whatever you want.
But like I do think that, you know, doing what like Echo does, which is you know, trying to figure out like what is the actual optimal thing, right? Like we have people that can play anything. What is the actual best thing we can do, right? Like, I think that is an interesting and absolutely valid way to do Mythic Plus as well, but I think almost everybody will have a better time doing the Pika strat than the Echo strat, right? The Echo strat is like a do not try this at home maneuver.
But well, you can.
Yeah,
I don't think you're gonna have a great time.
I think, you know, some people. That being said, you know, if you enjoy that kind of thought process, even if you're not going to get that kind of score, it can be fun to do as well on an amateur level. But
I think the important thing though is don't bring your teammates down in the process of you chasing that,
right.
Which I think is something that happens a lot, where that may be your goal, but you're imposing. But like if you start imposing those goals on other people, then it becomes a problem.
Well, I think that's why the conversation, like Pika mentioned there, the conversation with the team of like what are our goals this season, is really valuable because like whatever the answer is, if you got 5 people who are all okay with each other's answers, then you're golden, right? That's the important thing. You wanted to do keys with your friends, that's great. You want to do keys with the Moonkin, okay, but you can't do that in the same group, right? That never happens.
Yeah, but that being said, people always kind of say that that's their goal. Come down the line, push come to shove. I swear to God, nobody has that same goal. Like I started season 1. I'm like,
True.
Look, this is what we want to do. Like our comp is weird. We're gonna have fun. We're just gonna push as friends. And by the end of the season, people were like, yeah, I'm gonna go play with this comp because they have an HPAL.
Yeah.
And it's like, we had this conversation. They're like, yeah, I lied.
Yeah.
I mean, people's goals change. That's for sure. That's the other thing we mentioned earlier is that every push group eventually changes, because of situations like that, IRL or end game goals, same kind of change is necessary. And you just have to handle it with a grain of salt. Like people will be upset at each other a lot of times in that situation and then play with each other again down the line, maybe, hopefully. That's happened to me several times in the past, and I have like been upset with some people and then come back and play with them years later, luckily.
All right. On that note, I think it is time for us to move towards the end of the show. We've got some good questions as well for Pika here. Some of those came through our Twitter, by the way, where we're trying to make sure we tweet and collect questions from there. Others come from the Discord, including from our incredibly valuable patrons, who are Paul of US Tichondrius, Kumcubine of US Tichondrius, Riley, Ashen Hallow does not need a nerf in any way, shape, or form, Kappa.
Yeah, okay.
Ja, Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Chromed, Trekkie, Never Nude, Chewy, Renowned 60 in Storyline, and Flawless every Layer 12 in Torghast. Did I just beat 9.1? I guess it means acronyms for Final Fantasy soon. Summer is almost over and school is starting soon. Get learning, kids. It's not AMZ, it's AMZ. Salty Senny, Necris, Tankdill, Nevuk, Brad Ceratops, Sinmora. Eevee keeps dying to Slappy Hands in Mythic Plus. Yeah, dude, the biggest Slappy Hands troll was Sun King Salvation back in Nathria, where you just get the Phoenix yeeted into the group.
No, what do you mean? That literally happened to me on Sylvanas, and they used it on the Sylvanas images coming in, and it just one-shot.
Sentinels.
Yeah,
the Sentinel. I was like, what?
Wait, you can grip the Mechagon slimes?
The Mechagon slimes.
The ones that come out of the conveyor belt.
Oh, wait.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I've actually just done that with Death Grip to try and kill my friend before.
First boss of Plague Fall is pretty good too. Like all the ads are CC'd and then something breaks and then Grippy Hands pulls every single blob into the boss.
Yeah. Take Light of the Protector and Frenzied Regen off the GCD. No Trick. I schedule a Tettle's Flame. Sermaticus now resides on US Zul'jin. Daimat. Anubara. Lufer. Nyx. All I want from patch 9.1.5 is to not get a new system. Gallic, Brusif, Dratnos Abyss, Salting My Hair, BRB, M-Sanity, Xena, We Are Praying Hanny will pump in 9.1. That's going to have to get updated to 9.2 soon, I imagine. Rogue is not good enough for Prog. Still bad enough to be sat for SLG, bless up. That's going to have to be updated to KT sometime soon, I imagine. Red Color, youtube.com/workbringer, Walking Atlas, a horror of US Proudmoore, Kaoze's mythic team is Trash Cans and not Trash Cans, Snicker Shelby, Alphabet Soup, Druid Friends of Evolved Gaming, Roly Poly, Number 1 Simpsky for Trelsky, Indeterminate Clock DPS, Lolari, Lurka's Invis Pot bugged again, I'm starting to wonder if he ever uses it, and H. Miller. Thanks all for the support in the ever-growing list. Much appreciated.
He uses DPS pot. Oh, my Invis pot's bugged. I don't know what happened.
It's bugged.
No.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's
I was
bugged.
lagging.
Failure detection pile on me.
All right, moving on to Q&A. Our first question, we actually already covered it, was about Prot Warrior Covenants, but I think we did a pretty good job of talking all about that. So let's move on to Disciple TYO's question, which is, what do you think the biggest sleeper spec is in each role right now? I assume this is for Mythic Plus. So we could all maybe give our answers on this one. Anybody have a
So
sleeper?
for tank, it's probably Prot Warrior. Like honestly, I think that one's in my mind the biggest sleeper because everybody kind of knows that Guardian Druid is good, and everybody knows that like Brewmaster is like also decent, but not always the best. I think that not a lot of people know that Prot Warrior is a fairly solid tank.
I think Prot Warrior is insanely good.
No. We got to take the Venter Boomkin place. No, we're so horrible. Man, I don't know how we're going to deal. Do you see how many Prot Warriors on the rankings? Like, you can't look at that one guy and decide Prot Warrior is good. We need buffs for next season.
No, the best Gaslight ever is not Venter Moonkin. It's not Venter Holy Paladin. The best Gaslight ever is Wind Fury Totem under Sims for Havoc a Demon Hunter. Yeah. That's the best Gaslight of all time.
He's deflecting.
He is, yeah. It's the Moonkin toolkit, man. It's actually just disgusting to see it in action. I think that it's hard to argue, honestly, that any tanks are sleeper right now, because I think pretty much everybody has the line that like all 6 are really good right now. But yeah, if there needs to be one, honestly, I think even Vengeance Demon Hunter, like people kind of, there's been this death of Vengeance Demon Hunter that people have been talking about, but I think Vengeance is still really nuts and being slept on more. Well, I don't know. I mean, nobody's sleeping on tanks right now, I don't think.
I think for me, you'll see it a bit in the time trials coming up, but I think Warlock is completely like underrated.
Afflock.
And from a mythic. Like, not even talking about the pure damage, right? Like, damage, they can really pump out some damage. But the value of Imp Dispel on some of these bosses, especially on Tyrannical, is actually insane. Like, you don't know, like, how much damage you're actually taking compared to, like, if you have a Warlock that can, like, second Dispel other than your healer. So, like Spire's last boss, Kul Thurok in Theater, like, things like that. It's actually insanely easier that your healer can just pump and do damage. And Healthstones are amazing. Like, I don't know how many times I just survived because of Healthstones.
I think that Warlock is the DPS that is pretty sleeper, but I think it's not going to be sleeper. Give it another week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that.
That's what with Bear, right? Like in Great Push, like nobody played Bear season 1. They were super strong, but nobody played it because like they didn't know the power of it, right? The Great Push happens. Now all I can find in LFG is looking for Bear. like they're only looking for Bear. I'm like, are you guys pulling like MDI pulls? Probably not, but you still want a Bear. Why do you want a Bear? Oh, well, everyone's playing Bear. Okay, well, that's cool.
Then for healers, it's either Vesper Totem R Shaman or it's maybe Druid. I think that Vesper Totem R Shaman's like pretty heavily overlooked though, just because of Holy Paladin.
I think that's another thing where it's just like people will learn more about that in the next couple weeks, because there's some big numbers coming out of some Resto Shaman. I guess maybe you'll still see mostly Holy Paladins, though, from the top groups, because it's maybe not good enough to make a swap.
Well, like, from the damage perspective, it's there, right? But the utility is still missing, right? Yeah. You don't have that.
Disc is also seeing play, it looks like, for some keys, but that's also due to the fact that they can be Nelf and PI and stuff like that. It's a little bit different of a toolkit.
All right, next question comes from Teenage in Discord, who asks, do you think the delta between one content and all content players is too large? And if so, what's the best way to fix it while still having engaging loot systems? Not that domination sockets are engaging. So this is the question of like if I only do M+, or if I only do Raid, or if I only do PvP, compared to somebody who does all 3, is the gap between how geared we're going to be too large?
Dranos, you should be best at this, right? You made a whole video about this on season 1.
Basically, I think the answer is yes right now. I think that the delta... I think you should be best geared if you do all 3. But I think that there should be less of a gap than there is right now between the all 3 gamers and the Mythic Plus only gamers in particular.
Because right now the all 3 gamers are probably something in like the 10% throughput range.
More than 10.
You
think you're getting 8 from shards, and you're getting the item level from a bunch of pieces right now that are higher also, and you got better trinkets as well for a lot of specs. You have access to.
I mean, like PvP is a lot less like viable than it was last season, right? And like thank God, even for like the prog perspective, because I don't use badge, and like badge is mainly why like DPS are playing PvP, right? I don't use badge on my character, so I didn't really have to do PvP this season, which was fantastic, right? But raiding is pretty much mandatory, I think, because of Dom sockets and the Stygian Embers to upgrade your Dom sockets. So you have to raid. You don't have to Mythic Plus, but it is helpful to fill in those like slots that you're missing, things like that.
I think one thing as well about the PvP is that like while PvP is not mandatory, the PvP only players actually have good PvP gear because it's gaining 13 item levels in PvP combat, and so it's not like they are getting farmed by Mythic geared players, right? Whereas if you go into an M+ dungeon against a Mythic raid geared player, you are going to get farmed if you only have M+ gear right now.
Yeah, but I'd loved it for it to go back to like BC days, like resilience, like made it so much nicer because I could make PvP and like you get PvP gear, and then you try to bring that into PvE, it's like worse off, right? Like I personally liked it.
That is a scalding take.
Dude, I don't like it. I don't want to be wearing Karazhan gear for 3 tiers. I don't want to be still wearing Castle Nathria gear next tier.
All right,
man. I love Convention of our Fates or whatever that we had in Nighthold. That thing was really cool.
Wore that all expansion. Yeah.
True.
Next question is on a similar note. It comes from Polymorphs in Discord, who asks, which shards are mandatory for high M+ tanking? Do we need all 5 sockets, or can we get away with 2 to 4 with minimal loss?
For me, you only need 1. You need Accreation. Like the Shard of Kier.
Yeah.
Like all the other ones, like it's nice to have. Like don't get me wrong, like more damage, like things like that. Like they're all like it's like okay, like they maybe they'll get you like a little bit more damage here and there, but they won't like fix major problems. Like ultimately, clean play will ultimately help you time the key. But Accreation, like the Shard of Kier, does so much healing. It does like something like 8 to 9% of the healing overall, and it's like wearing a trinket, right? It's like you get it one more spot. And I think that shard alone is fantastic for Mythic Prog. Like we in Ascent, we made like all our raiders wear it, right? If you didn't wear it, you got flamed constantly. and then, but for Mythic Plus as well, like Accreation is so good.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think for DPS players, you know, the 3 damage ones and then Accretion are pretty much mandatory. But actually, that 5th slot, you kind of don't need the 5th slot on anybody.
You don't need the 5th slot for even for DPS. You don't. Need
and you'll actually see, like, if you look at the MDI runs that have been going on so far, the gear sets people are using often involve like a legendary in the chest slot, and then the other 4 slots have the domination sockets.
No, there's one DPS that will do it though. DK, because DK has this weird interaction with
They fixed that.
You know the Unholy one? Oh, they fixed that?
Yeah, they fixed that.
They fixed
your pet's doing like crazy damage.
Dude,
yeah, that was really good.
Yeah. Our DK was yelling in raid, "Heal my pet! Heal my pet!" We initially thought he was trolling, but it ended up starting to do like a lot of his damage, and you're like, hold on, wait a second, because it was like amping with DT or something, right?
It amps with it amped with Unholy like mastery that increases shadow damage and pet damage or whatever, and it was like triggering off both of those or something. I don't know, but they fixed it.
Something stupid.
Yeah. All right, next question comes on Twitter from Taylor, who asks, is the imbalance between magic and physical mitigation of tanks a good thing overall, or does it just lead to some being viable and others not being?
Sometimes that's the case. I'll take this one. I've let Pika take a ton of tank questions, but this one I think is the most outrageous. Stop that. The most outrageous example, this was back in Season 3 of BFA when you had to have high magic mitigation to do high keys because of the emissaries. The Tides Emissary would melee you for so much magic damage. Like Prot Warrior was just so hard to play that season. But these days, as you saw, all 6 tanks are in the top 10 right now for the world, which is really nice to see. So they can all play around the different levels of magic damage reduction that they have. Prot Warrior is still pretty squishy to magic damage, but like we mentioned earlier, Spell Reflect is insane, and if you time all your DR around your Spell Reflect when it's down, then you can make it work like Pika does.
I think I like it, like personally, because what it does is it creates innovation in the space, right? Like some tanks, like I was thinking before, like I want to pull as many groundskeepers as possible because they don't really do anything to me, right? But like for Trell, like they just take him out back and like, you know. But like what that does is it creates unique routing and it makes like different teams play differently. So it's more interesting to watch, right? Even from the player base, right? If you watch the same people all do a 3-minute pull like an Incarn, right? If everybody had that same ability, it'd be so boring to watch. But seeing a tank do one thing, do another thing, you're like, oh, that's really cool. Oh wait, that's really cool. And I really like that difference. If everybody had the same kit, it'd just be boring.
All right. Our next question, also from Twitter, at Matt Monty, who asks, how do we feel about Yoda's idea? And then this was Yoda's tweet from yesterday. Idea for letting people obtain what they want more easily, aka without Korthia, while also invigorating the game. adding Deathbound Shard and sockets to the Valor and Conquest vendors, and increasing the Conquest and Valor cap based on rating, either M+ or PvP.
For you. Why do you take it?
Dratnos, you want to field this? No. Dratnos
seems good to me. Yeah, seems seems pretty great. I think getting the ability to get the sockets and conduits from Valor and from Conquest would be awesome. Yeah, I'd be down.
I actually personally don't like that, and why I don't like that is that, I mean, not that I don't like it. I think it's something that should be added on later, because what the problem this incurs is as you get more reasons to do other content, like people are like, oh, I want to be able to get it in Mythic Plus, or I want to get it in an arena, the same thing that other people are getting. You're not just creating a new avenue for you to get it. You're now creating an avenue for someone like Dratnos that I'm gonna go do everything, like double the amount of time. Right?
Don't
now
rub your hands together like that.
I'm not just gonna do Torghast, or I'm not gonna do Korthia dailies. I'm now gonna do Korthia dailies, Torghast, and I'm gonna do Mythic Plus and spam it, right? And you don't want to be like forcing people to do content that want to min-max.
Yeah, that's true. You might you don't want to add any more columns to my spreadsheet of the things to do.
Another
spreadsheet.
Another Dratnos YouTube video, of course.
Yeah.
Content
indeed. All right, yeah, I think that's a valid complaint. I think that, again, anytime you think about that, it's that question of the gap between the all content player and the one content player, and I do think that, yeah, that's something they don't think through enough. Similarly, like there's another trend of thought, which is just like adding more stuff to the cataloged research vendor to be purchased for cataloged research, right? Like recently we got legendaries on there for 2,000 cataloged research, and the thing where you don't lose Stygia when you die for more cataloged research. But this has that kind of problem that Echoes of Nilotha did, where it's like, it's nice, but it actually, it's just the one currency you're already grinding, right? And so like, I can't afford to spend that on a new legendary effect, right? Like I'm saving up for sockets and conduits. Like that grind is already long and stretching out in front of me, right? So this is just like adding on to the end of that, or more realistically, like it's just, I'm going to get it through the other sources, right? So I think that's another thing that they should consider more often, as well as like making stuff that we can grind in parallel or with a slightly, with a different currency, rather than having everything just on the same currency, because that doesn't actually, if we're already grinding that currency every day doing our Korthia swoop, that doesn't actually reduce the length of the grind. Just some thoughts.
Yeah. There definitely is a lot of things, and I think ultimately it should be cut down. The grind for alts, and even for people who don't just purely raid, should be cut down, I think, a little bit.
It's tough, though, because like, when you list like things you'd like about it, a lot of them are just in conflict, right? Like a lot of these different objectives like sound nice, and then it just makes one of the other objectives worse, right?
Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
I think it's the unfortunate reality that like M+ probably is the mini game to raid, and like I don't know how much they can really do about it without completely isolating the two from one another.
I think they could give us a couple more item levels. I don't know. I don't think it'd be
that hard. They could give you CMs. Like they could bring back CMs, right? But realistically, you can't? They're never doing that. Fully bound. Okay, exactly.
That's just like saying you've got an automobile and being like, yeah, they should bring back the horse-drawn carriage. It's not happening.
I'm down with the Model T if you were down.
Yeah. All right, our final question comes from Ghost in Discord, who asks, can you explain the third boss in Spires? That's the big robot. I know you can extend the phase by not letting him stomp, by outranging. What does dodging or freedoming it have? And how does all that work? So we've answered this one a little bit before. Pika, are you a third boss Spires understander?
I am a master of this boss and how to choose it, okay?
Take it away.
So there's actually so much to this boss that people don't even know, like that we're finding out week by week. Like for instance, did you know if you stomp the boss on a Windwalker right before he goes into the phase, the Windwalker should hit Fort Brew, take the hit, diffuse that dot back on it during the extra damage phase, and it takes so much damage from
this is some Windwalker propaganda.
That is a lot.
Have you ever gotten it to stomp as it's starting its charge up cast, and then it just has like 10 energy while it's soaking up the balls already?
Yeah. I mean, there's like there's a
I
lot
don't know
of
how to cause that to happen. Yeah,
a lot of quirks, but okay. So like just to answer the question like fully, right? Let's start like just from the basis. How do you get the boss to stomp? Is you stand right under his hitbox and it'll force a stomp, which then reduces his max energy, right? And when he hits 0 energy is when he goes into his phase 2. right? You want to hit him to a point. You want to stomp him at least 2 times in phase 1 and 3 times in phase, like after the intermission phase, 3 times, so that he doesn't drop a 3rd set of balls. So every tank needs to have that kind of like rhythm. You only need to do it like 2 or 3 times in the second part, but typically you do it for 3 times. And why I personally do it is that if I spell reflect the stomp, it puts a dot back on the boss. So that's not like a lot of tanks to do that, but like from my perspective, that's why you want to stomp it. But you want to, well, why people stomp it is they want to align it with cooldowns. So if your team is holding cooldowns, you want to stomp it as fast as possible, as many times as possible, so that it goes into the down phase faster and it takes extra damage. But in the second time it comes up, if you stomp 4 times, it's going to drop the balls and then instantly go into the phase, and the balls are going to be on top of the boss, and you're going to wipe. So like, there's a lot of little. I saw Trell actually wipe to that, I think, earlier this week.
Just flame me one more time. Let me have it.
One encore flame.
But I think, I don't remember if you stopped too much or you stopped too little.
I stopped too little. I forgot to stomp in phase 2.
Yeah, he stopped so it dropped like a 3rd set of balls and it immediately went into the phase, right? But like, to answer your question, basically, is that people stomp it to 1, make the cooldown happen faster so they can unleash their cooldowns on it. 2, they do it so that they can dodge a 3rd set of balls dropping, like a 3rd set of those debuffs dropping. And 3, they do it because they want to either spell reflect it or diffuse the damage back onto the boss.
And if you don't have Spell Reflect, the effect that Freedom has is that it makes you completely immune to the damage, right? If you are freedomed as you're getting hit,
because the dot puts a slow on you. So Freedom mitigates the damage because it never can put that dot on you, that initial hit. So it's like an immunity, right? So it's really busted, which is why HPAL needs nerf, right?
Yeah.
But also, like a lot of tanks don't know that they should be using like movement freeing abilities like Tiger's Lust, right? Like after you take it, because it just removes the dot. Because it is a movement impairment.
Yeah, it's you'll find some things where the movement effect and the damage are not on the same ability, and so you can immune half but not the other. But this effect, it's all tied together, so if you immune the movement, you immune the damage as well. Fate Scribe is the same way, right? The Fate Scribe balls, if you're freedomed, you can soak those and you won't take damage because it is just the one thing. And you kind of have to learn that on an effect-by-effect basis of like, what happens if I freedom and soak this?
Yeah, Freedom and Spell Reflect are just the wildest abilities and the things that they can prevent. It's insane.
Yeah, but like that's why I, again, go back to like loving Mythic Plus and Blizzard doing a really good job. There's so many things that people don't even know that you can do right now in the game, right? Even though like people have put countless hours into it, like you don't even know. Maybe like Enhancement Shaman can do something so wild, but there's not enough Enhancement Shamans out there to learn these kind of abilities.
They can drop you Wind Fury Totem.
Oh my goodness, it's insane.
But that's why it's so fun to push on a off-meta spec, because you get to discover those things and figure it out for the community, and then you get to blow people's minds in chat. Like right now, Pika's blowing like 10 people's minds. Like, oh, I can diffuse that dot on the boss. Let's go.
They can use Sundering. They have a stop.
Oh yeah, no. If you're playing an Enhancement Shaman in a group with a Windwalker, you can use Sundering on the boss to brick your Windwalker's clones during their Fist of Fury. That's true. The Sundering effect, it's the same spell ID as the one that incapacitates regular mobs, and clones won't Fist of Fury incapacitated mobs. So you can do. I've done this.
Oh my god!
To troll your Windwalkers, you just hit it with the Sundering, and they.
That's a good one. That's a really good one, actually.
Good thing Fist does no damage anyway.
True. Okay. On that note, we are out of questions, so we are about finished with the show. Pika, where can people find you to consume your content in various places?
Yeah, you can catch my content at twitch.tv/PLKATV titles, and or twitter.com/PLKATV.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I hope to have you on again sometime, and good luck pushing keys this season.
Thank you. It was great.
Later, everybody.
Later.
Bye.